common question that I get asked is that, well, wait a minute. Okay, fine, Ken, I get it. God has to punish sin. Somebody's committed a crime; they deserve punishment. But here's my blockage, Ken. Here's my mental break on this: is that we all have a finite period of time, a finite amount of time on Earth, right? We don't live forever, which means even if we're committing a sin every second of our lives, there's still an end point. There is a limited number of sins. It may be a huge number, but it's still a finite number of sins that we can commit here on Earth. And yet, Ken, you're also telling me that hell is eternal. Hell lasts forever. How can it be just to punish someone eternally for a non-eternal number of sins? If each sin had a certain amount of punishment it deserves, then even if you add them all up, it should still be a finite amount of punishment. Like a pretty solid objection, doesn't it? Well, I want to answer this first by describing a way that I have seen it answered in the past that I'm not satisfied with. Probably actually one of the most common answers to this that I'll explain why I'm not buying that explanation that a lot of Christians offer. And then I'll tell you what explanation I do buy and why I think this actually, it makes perfect sense for hell to be eternal. All right. The first answer that a lot of people give is based on position. And the second one, as you can see on the screen, will be based on what I call duties. Here's the position explanation. And this is from a theologian named Benjamin Skog. Well, it's another one of those systematic theology books on my bookshelf. When an individual commits an assault against his or her neighbor, a certain punishment is deserved. However, when that same assault is carried out against the leader of a nation, the punishment is greater because the victim of the assault is greater in stature. And so the argument goes, following the same reasoning, committing offenses against our fellow humans may only warrant a finite punishment. But because God is so much higher in stature and God is infinite, that the sin against God is deserving of eternal punishment. And if that rings true to you, great. I'm glad that strengthens you. I got Siri going on my computer over here. Siri, go away. All right, whatever. But it doesn't convince me, in all honesty. And here's why. I don't agree with this analogy. He says, if you commit a crime against your neighbor, you get a certain level of punishment, but against the head of state, you get another sense of punishment. Folks, the way I look at it, we are all made in the image of God, and we all have equal value. I don't care if a murder is committed against a homeless person or against a United States senator. The punishment that is deserved should be the same. Because in God's eyes, those two people have the same value, the same inherent value. Now, again, I'm sympathetic to the argument because while everything I've said is true, yes, God does have higher value than us. Obviously, I get it. But I don't buy the analogy. I don't think that just because we have a difference in position, in difference in that necessarily means that the punishment that's doled out for the sin should be different necessarily. Maybe not. I just don't find it over the top convincing. What I do find convincing, however, is the duty argument. And maybe this is because of my background as a lawyer. Probably is. All right. But let me give you this example. Do I have a slide for this or not? I can't remember. Let me look here. No, I don't. So I'm a lawyer, right? So let's pretend that, and obviously I'm not in private practice anymore. I just represent Trinity. But for over 2 decades, I was a private practice attorney where I had clients come in off the street, make appointments, they come meet with me, they would retain me, and I'd represent them in various different legal proceedings. Now let's pretend, first of all, that I got my friend, I'll call him Drew. Why? Because I really do have a friend named Drew. He was best friend in high school. Probably not watching because I don't think he watched the show. But if you ever do, Drew, hey, how you doing? He's a police officer down in Florida now. But let's say Drew comes to me and he says, Ken, I want to tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone. And he confides in me and he tells me the secret. And then I turn around and I betray his trust and I reveal his secret to someone. Well, there's certainly going to be some consequences I'm going to face for that, aren't there? Drew might not speak to me ever again. Certainly not going to trust me with any of his secrets again. All right. There's going to be a loss in that relationship. Now, let's pretend that I have a client that comes in my professional capacity as an attorney and tells me something confidential. And then I turn around and reveal that to someone. Well, I'm still going to have the loss of that relationship, right? That person may very well not be my client anymore. They may fire me. But I could also face additional consequences. I could face discipline from the state bar. All right, I could lose my license to practice law or have it suspended or what have you. Why? Because in both examples, I owe a moral duty to these people, right? Where I owe a moral duty not to reveal a secret that was entrusted to me. But in the second example, I also owe a legal duty, another duty on top of the moral one that's imposed upon me by the law and carries with it additional consequences. So what we see is we have varying levels of duties that we can owe. And I argue that God, as our creator, as the ultimate judge, as the standard for all things good, he is literally the source of morality. Literally all of our moral duties stem from our ultimate moral duty to him. In other words, the reason we even owe a moral duty to our fellow human beings is because we first owe moral duties to God. He's the origin of it. For that reason, we owe higher moral duties to the origin of morality than we do to those who are subsets of that. All right. So we owe a greater duty to God. So because we owe a greater duty to God, then we could face additional consequences and would deserve additional consequences for violating our duties to God than we would violating our duty to people. All right. So on the basis of duties and owing a higher duty, I think it is possible to argue, hey, hell should be eternal because we're violating a higher duty to God than we are just to our duties to our fellow human being. That being said, I don't think you even need to go there. If that's all philosophical mumbo jumbo, just going right over your head, fine, don't worry about it. Because I think the answer to this question is even simpler. And that is sin doesn't stop, folks. The eternality of sin. Let's take a look at how the Bible describes hell and the experience of people in hell. Matthew 8:12. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Remember that term. All right. Again, Matthew 13:49 through 50. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We see that term again. All right. Now, most people, I think, when they hear that term, gnashing of teeth, they think that it's a sign of pain, of torment, like you're gritting your teeth, in pain, enduring the pain. That is us imposing our 21st century understandings of words upon someone who wrote them 2,000 years ago. All right. That is not what that phrase means. But Ken, how do you know? Because it shows up elsewhere in the Bible. The phrase gnashing of teeth does not only appear when talking about the state of people in hell. We see it applied to people who are not in hell. And through context clues, we can look to see what it means when we're seeing how it's used in other situations. Here's one. Psalm 35, verses 15 through 16. But when I stumbled, they gathered in glee. Assailants gathered against me without my knowledge. They slandered me without ceasing. Like the ungodly, they maliciously mocked. They gnashed their teeth at me. Does this sound like it's describing someone who's in pain and torment? No, this is someone mocking someone else, right? Ridiculing someone else, making fun of someone else. All right, give you another example here. Acts chapter 7, verse 54. This is right after Stephen, before he gets stoned, right? Stephen has been called before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, and he has just given his Christian testimony. And in response, we see when the members of the Sanhedrin heard this, They were furious and gnashed their teeth at him. Gnashing of teeth has nothing to do with physical pain. Gnashing of teeth refers to being vehemently opposed to someone. All right? In the first example, we saw people were mocking and teasing. They were opposed to him. Second example, Sanhedrin were so upset, so angry at Stephen for what he just said, that they were expressing that anger, opposition to him by gnashing their teeth at him. That is what gnashing of teeth means. And that is what's going on in hell. So understand this. Someone may enter hell with a finite number of sins on their ledger, so to speak. And that is the case, right? But once they get there, they don't stop sinning. They blame God for their situation, not themselves. And so they are constantly angry at God, cursing God, blaspheming God over and over and over again. So they keep adding sins to their proverbial ledger. And so there is never a point where they have ever paid the just punishment for all of their sins, because they keep racking up the bill higher and higher and higher and higher eternally the entire time they're there. That's why hell is eternal. Because people, when you say, why should people be punished for eternally for a finite number of sins? The answer is they're not. They're punished for an eternal number of sins, because you're assuming when you ask that question that people stop sinning when they get to hell. But they don't. They're still in existence. They keep on sinning. And so they keep racking up their punishment over and over and over again for eternally. That's why hell is eternal.